Hi guys, it's Kelly Latevola here and I'm back with another video for Neat and Tangled. Today I'm going to be using a couple of stencils. This is the Pentagon and the Polygon stencil, and then also the stamp set called Better Together. The whole kind of idea behind this card was I thought it would be super cute to have like two kind of friends that were separated. It's an I miss you card. I'm frequently separated from all of my craft girl friends, so I need a lot of these cards. I wanted there to be a border, so I just cut some strips of copy paper and I'm using Tombow Mono multi-glue on the back of it, just kind of smearing it around to get all of the edges, and then that way I didn't have tape that was this thin that I'd be able to peel up. So the Tombow Mono multi-glue is repositionable after it dries, so I know that I'll be able to put down the strips and then I'll just tear off the edges and fold them over. And then when I'm done coloring and all the masking is done, completed, I'll be able to pull this back up and it won't tear my paper. So I'm just giving myself, it was just slightly larger than a quarter of an inch on each side, and then I also put a strip down the middle so that each little girl would be separated. I was trying to put my stamps down so I could figure out where I wanted their feet to be. I still ended up messing that up, but nonetheless, I just used regular Post-its to kind of mark off the ground where they were going to be. I'm stamping in intense black ink from Simon Says Stamp because it is Copic safe, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copics. So I'm going to ink them up, and this first one I managed to get down just about exactly where I wanted her, and she fit perfectly in my little rectangle. The other one, you'll be able to see her feet are slightly higher up. It's hard to stamp when you can't look directly above something because my video camera's there. Anyway, I wanted them to have some matching artwork on their walls, kind of like, you know, when you were growing up, how you had like little best friend charms, or things that you shared that were exactly the same. So I thought it would be cute if they had matching wall artwork, so I'm just using a T-square ruler to draw those in, and then I just used full stick Post-it notes. So now that I have everything masked off, I'm going to go ahead and put down one of the stencils, and then I'm going to mask the other side of the card. This is because I'm not doing just the same color distress inks on both sides. For the girl on the right hand side, I decided to go with some blues and greens. So I'm just going to kind of do a gradient from the bottom to the top, from the Squeeze Lemonade to the Peacock Feathers up to Salty Ocean. And then just, blend them on. I'm going to move the stencil and you'll see that it's like super bright white, and I wanted something a little bit more subtle. So I'm going to go back in with the same colors and just go over that until it blends a little bit better. You can do this way, where you do the stencil first and then go over with just the same colors of distress ink, or you can do it this way, which is I'm going to do the distress ink first. This one I was a little less, I didn't really have a game plan. The other one was kind of like a gradient from the top to the bottom. This one I just kind of, just put the color wherever it moved me. I just put them down kind of randomly. This time we're using the Squeeze Lemonade, the picked raspberry, and carved pumpkin. I just kind of wanted something that was some continuity between them, so that's why I used the Squeeze Lemonade on both sides. Now I'm going to put down the other stencil. Like, these things are the same but different. So like it's distress ink and it's a stencil, both of the backgrounds, but they're different colors and it's a different stencil even though they're similar. So now I'm going to start removing all of those masks, and this is what I'm left with. I'm going to go back in with that same T-square ruler because I really like things that are framed in. Don't mind my big head here. And I'm going to frame in those rectangles so that they are separated. Now you'll see on the bottom portion that it's just white right now, but it's going to be their carpet, flooring, whatever. So it looks a little odd, but we're going to get there. For the framed pieces I was telling you about, there's a little heart in this set, and I thought that would be super cute way to just put that in there. And then there's a smaller outline heart, and I used that for the second picture for the girl on the right hand side. So now doing their carpet, I'm going to go in with some cool grays. You can really tell on that left hand side how much higher that girl's feet are, but don't worry, we're going to fix it. So I'm starting with my darkest color in the background. The darker something is, the further it looks to be away. So I'm going darkest to lightest. And originally I just made it directly underneath her feet, and it didn't occur to me until later how awkward that looked. So I will go back in and fix it later. I'm going to give my lightest color just a swoop of the whole thing so that everything, it blends nicely. Here I'm going to go back in and add it just slightly above her feet. And now I'm trying to figure out whether or not I can risk coloring the left-hand side the same way. I did. I don't think it's terribly noticeable. In order to color their carpet, I just picked a pink and a blue, and I'm just going to go directly over the gray. Now, you won't be able to see it a ton in the back where it's the darkest, but really up front you can totally tell that it is pink or it is blue. And it's just a nice way to get some shading without having to use a ton of colors. I'm going to use these same gray markers to do their frames. I like to, when I use black in a card, I like to tie it in. And I knew my sentiment was going to be black. The carpeting is obviously very dark gray. So I just like having other elements of that. Sometimes the black can be a bit aggressive for certain color schemes. These bright colors I just love black with. So for the frame, I'm just adding a little bit of shading from the corners. I'm leaving the centers as the highlight on this particular frame. And just using a really light hand and the tip of a marker. For this frame over here, I'm going to color the whole thing in with my lightest color. And then I'm going to add the darkest shading around the, I guess, the center rectangle. And this is going to give it the look of more like a beveled edge, like it's sunk in. I colored the third frame the same as the first. Now we're going to start coloring our little girls. So I picked my, this is like my go-to color combination for coloring people. I played around with it a lot when I first got my Copics, and then watching other artists, this is the one that I found that works for me. And so if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So I'm coloring this, not really looking at like a light source per se, but if I had one, it would be center front, which is how a lot of people color. So there's going to be shading around her face because her arms are up above her face, underneath her neck because her chin would block the light from there, on the tops of her legs where her skirt would hang over. And then I'm just working from my lightest out to my darkest, and then the darkest back out to my lightest. Before I completely cover her face with the lightest color, I'm going to go in with an R20 and just add some little circles on her cheeks for some blush, and then I'll go over and blend everything out with the lightest color. I'm going to do the same thing for the girl on the right hand side. Nothing different there. And then I picked some cool browns to do their little stuffed animals with. So at first when I was doing this dog, I thought maybe I was going to make him spotted. And then I decided that I had enough pattern going on with the walls. So I just decided that I was just going to make him solid. So for him, for the shading, there would be shading underneath his ears. There would be shading behind his head. So on his body, there would be shading over the tops of his ears because they're folded over. So I used just the darkest color on the spots where I felt would be the darkest. So those areas that I just named. And then I'm going to go back and blend everything out. I didn't really use any flicking motions on this because it was such a small area and he didn't need to really have any texture. Stuffed animals are typically pretty smooth. And then just filled everything in with the lightest color. I'm going to use the same cool colors for her owl over here, so everything's kind of, matchy-matchy. If you watch my videos, you know I have a problem with matchy-matchy. It's just how I roll. Like if I paint my nails pink, then for the rest of the week at work I'm wearing something that has that pink or that matches that pink in it. I have real problems, folks. I mean, first world problems. So for this owl, the shading, I decided to make the top of his head a little bit darker so his face would be lighter. But there would be shading on his belly and where his arms are hanging over, where her arm is over his belly, there would be shading. And then just use, the lightest color to fill in those areas. I switched to the E40s for their hair. I'm using the same colors for both of their hair, even though they're going to have different hair colors. This is one of those things where, people always ask, what colors did you use? Or the reality of the situation is, even if I tell you exactly what colors I used, yours still isn't going to look like mine. Yours still isn't going to look like mine because you're going to use the colors in different quantities. So here I just gave her a little part, and I'm using those back to the flicking motion so she has some strands of hair, and I'm trying to keep a highlight like across, like at a diagonal across her hair, so that it's not just all dark. And then for this little girl over here on the left hand side, I'm going to color her hair all in with the lightest color, and then do kind of like little curly cues, so that she would have a different texture to her hair. I'm also going to use the darkest color I picked, which I think is an E49, on her hair, where I did not use it on the girl's hair on the right because I wanted her to be more blonde. Anyway, back to this quantities thing. So you can totally change the hair color that you're coloring without adding or subtracting any markers, just by the amount that you put in. So if you're really light-handed with your darks, they're going to be more blonde. If you're really dark or really heavy-handed with your darks, then they're going to be more brunette, and that's awesome, and that means you don't have to buy all of the markers. So for their clothes, I kind of I didn't want to keep adding in colors. So I picked the pink. I knew that I was going to make the hearts pink. I don't know what all little girls love hot pink, right? I mean, at least I did. So I'm doing just kind of like a gradient kind of heart here, so that there's the point is the darkest part, and then the highlights on the top. And I colored the smaller hearts that same way. I'm going to go ahead and make her bow dark. Now there would be shading on the back of her bow where it's folded over, and then where it meets in the center would be darker, and around the edges would be darker as well. The highlight will be in the bumped up part, the folded over portion of the bow. That's where your highlight will be. And then I'm going to do her skirt pink as well. So anyway, what I was saying is I just didn't want a ton of colors, because I already kind of had a lot going on with the whole scene business and all of the distress inks in the background and the pattern. So I kept their outfits pretty similar. So for here, there would be underneath the owl would be shadowed, and then or kind of around the edges of her skirt, because it's wrapping around and the light is hitting her from the front. So then those side edges would be darker, and the highlight would be right in the front center. I'm also going to color this little polka dotted portion of her skirt pink, but I wanted to give it a little bit more body, so I decided I was going to create some like ruffles or pleating. So basically you'll see I'm just creating kind of little V's. You'll also see that I'm adding like a line of darker color into the spaces in between. Don't do that. I don't know what I was thinking. It would all be light. It would all be light. And now you can see me with my lightest color kind of scrubbing at those to remove some of the dark, so that the pleating makes sense. So the lightest areas, the parts that you want to look peaked, don't add any shading to the bottom of those. I have no idea what I was doing. So for her shirt, I went with some, like, I don't know, I think one of the colors is like called Bahama Blue or something, and that totally makes sense. So for here, there would obviously be a lot of shading on her chest, behind her arm. I added a little bit of shading where her elbow would be, and then just along the underside of her arm. Typically your shadows fall more to the bottom, and then the highlight areas are really just going to be on the top of her arm. For this, don't mind that BO2, for this little girl's dress, I thought it would be fun to kind of do like a little bit of a gradient, just so that the green would also be represented. So I started with a BO2 on the bottom and a YG03 at the top. And then I'm going to mix the B00 and the YG01 in the center, so that everything kind of flows really nicely. And you can just kind of go over that as many times as you need for it to blend well. And then I used the I think it was a BO4, to continue those pleats up into her dress so that it made sense. I decided to do both of their shoes in blue because it would match both of their outfits. And then, I guess that blue on the left hand side would be more represented. Plus I kind of view blue like as a neutral. I know most people don't, but I do. I left a highlight on just the tops of their toes. I'm gonna use the orange to color in the owl's feet as well as his beak, and then I just used it to fill in some of the background on the left hand side because my masks were kind of off. I used a bit of a C1 to shade kind of the white portions of the photos. I know I'm going to use a white gel pen to change the color of the polka dots on her dress, and then also just add a stripe on her little skirt, just to give it a little extra something. It's a one-layer card, and sometimes those little details really help make things pop. I like to outline all of my images with a writing pen. This is a EK Success writing pen. It's Copic safe, so if I needed to go back in and make any, fix anything up, I totally could. Now that everything is done, I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment, which is from the same set, that Better Together, and I stamped it in black Simon Says Stamp ink. It's like impossible to read, but that's okay because the white gel pen is going to save the day. I'm going to outline my sentiment with that so that it's really easy to see. I'm going to go in with some Stardust stickles to make those little heart photos stand out, since it's kind of like their connector, and then use some clear Wink of Stella just on their like pieces of their outfits so that they're sparkly. I'm going to use, what is this? The clear mix from Neat and Tangled to kind of accent the sentiment. And then that's the whole card. So I know it was kind of, I mean, it's long, but the coloring was kind of quick because otherwise we'd be here all day, folks. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you guys learned a little bit of something and enjoyed your time, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.